After the Lin family went bankrupt, I went from being a princess on high to a slave who fell into the mud. The childhood friend I've loved for a full 15 years stepped on my hand and asked me to shine the shoes of his beloved white moon. Then a car accident took my memory and I forgot him and my love. After the Lin family went bankrupt, I was reduced from the high and mighty Miss Lin to a bar girl selling alcohol. It took me 3 whole years to go from cold and aloof in the beginning to smiling. Who knows what I've really been through these past 3 years? One night, I went to sell wine as usual. I looked at myself in the mirror, heavily made up, wearing flaming red lips, exuding an air of wind and dust, with none of the nobility and elegance of the original Lin family's first lady. I was pushed into a box and caught a glimpse of Huo Li in the crowd. He was wearing a black suit, his eyebrows were cold and peaked, his nose was high and straight, and for 3 whole years, the years had not left any traces on his face, but instead, he was more mature. What are you waiting for? Why don't you hurry up and pour wine for our young master Huo? I didn't know who pushed me, pushing me in front of Huo Li. All of a sudden, I raised my head to collide with his gaze. He furrowed his brows in disgust, his voice undisguised with dislike. Lin and Anne, how do you still have the face to appear in front of me? My body trembled uncontrollably. I hadn't expected to actually run into him here. I thought I'd never have anything to do with Huo Li in my life. This man I've loved for a full 15 years. And my childhood friend. At one time, I always thought that Huo Li and I would know each other until we stayed together, until 5 years ago, when he met a woman, Zhang Qian. He fell hopelessly in love with her just because of Zhang Qian's words. Ali, Lin An forced me to leave you on the basis of her being the eldest miss of the Lin family, and I had no choice. He was then able to disregard the years of friendship between the 2 families, frantically suppress my dad's company, and even planted evidence to frame my dad for bribery, causing my family to fall apart and lose my dad overnight. Lin An? Isn't this the former Miss Lin family? The Lin family's eldest miss actually came here to be an escort. She wouldn't know that our young master Huo is here, so she purposely sought it out. Lin and Anne, I advise you to die of this heart. Let me tell you, our young master Huo is going to marry the violinist Zhang Xiao. You don't take a piss and look at yourself now, even if it's a free gift, I don't want it. That's right, after 3 years of working here as a wine seller, what kind of good goods can she be? But for the sake of our previous love, our brothers can still love you a little bit, just as a tip. A few of them laughed and coaxed, cracking yellow dirty jokes, their unbridled eyes ogling my body. Everyone laughed and laughed at my lack of self-importance and my being as low as dust. I licked my dry lips and immediately lowered my head, terrified. I'm sorry, Mr. Huo. I didn't think I'd run into you here and defile your eyes. I'll leave immediately. This is a place I don't want to be in for a moment, either. Huo Li's eyes flashed with surprise and obvious disbelief. He thought I was still trying to get away with it. He snorted coldly and warned me. Lin and Anne, I don't eat your shit. If you go looking for trouble with Shallow again, don't blame me for being rude to you. He was always like this. Every time Zhang Qian told him, he would believe her without any principles. Even if I hadn't done those things, all he had to do was check and he would know the truth, but he never did. Simply because Zhang Xiao is his sweetheart, his white moonlight, and I'm nothing but a licking dog who's been chasing him hard for 15 years. I crouched down once again. I wouldn't dare, Mr. Huo, don't worry, I definitely wouldn't dare to appear in front of Miss Zhang, much less cause her pain. Huo Li's face was hard to read. I hope so. Some people say that it is too late for me to recognize the truth, and others say that I have been in love for 15 years, but in the end, I have done for others is that I deserve to deserve. I ignore everyone's ridicule, send the most sincere blessings. I wish that Mr. Huo and Miss Zhang can be eternally united and have children and grandchildren early. Huo Li stared at me coldly and spat out one word without mercy. Get lost. I rolled away numbly, walking down the winter streets, the wind chilly and biting, the streets empty at night, only 2 meager streetlights on the side of the road. I wrapped my clothes around me. The only denim jacket I had was by far the thickest I had. It was already white from washing, and I looked up at all the lights, none of which were on for me. I'm like an abandoned stray dog in this city with no home and nowhere to go. 5 years ago, Zhang Xiaolo came to our school as a transfer student. She has captured the hearts of many people with her gentle and lovely looks and her good fiddle playing. That includes Huo Li. He gradually shifted his mind from my body to Zhang Shannon's, and the things he would have accompanied me to do, he ended up accompanying Zhang Shannon to do. They soon fell in love. Their love affair is hot and beautiful, and I, as a childhood friend who has loved Huo Li for more than 10 years, naturally inevitably became the laughing stock of everyone's tea time. One day Zhang Xiao found me and told me to stay away from Huo Li or else she would make me lose my reputation. The young and arrogant me naturally didn't take her threat to heart. In fact, even if I had the intention to stay away from Huo Li, but the cooperation and affection between the two families was there, it was inevitable that I would still have to meet with him. Zhang Asai hated me for it, and once when she and I brushed shoulders at the corner of a staircase, she fell down the stairs and woke up telling everyone that I had pushed her. Everyone believed her, and Huo Li even locked me in the school's equipment room for it. He knew that I had been claustrophobic since I was a child, but he still closed the door and left me alone in that dark and tiny room, and he said to me in a high and cold voice, "Lin Anan, you have to pay the price for doing something wrong." I don't understand what I did wrong. I didn't push her at all, but if he went to check the surveillance, he could know, but he still believed Zhang Xiaolo's side of the story, and the love of childhood sweethearts for more than 10 years can't resist the 2 years with Zhang Xiaolo after all. I called him when I was most scared, and he downplayed it by saying, "It's just a little lesson for you, you're too alive to die." Hearing those words, everything from the past, my love for him, all went up in smoke. My thoughts slowly came back to me as the cold wind wrapped around my body, my face growing pale, and a bottle smashed into my face as I returned to my dilapidated rental house. "You disaster! What are you doing back here? Why did you simply die out there?" I didn't dodge. My heart had long since gone numb listening to my mom's tirade against me. The bottle grazed directly across my forehead and hit the wall behind me in pieces, the shards cutting across my skin and leaving a trail of blood. I silently crouched down to clean up the mess, my ears still filled with my mom's curses at me. "Why weren't you the one who died in the first place? You're a spoilsport. You killed your father and made me live like this. Why don't you go to hell?" Although I had heard such words countless times long ago, my heart still hurt like a knife. If I had a choice, I would have liked to have been the one to die in the first place. My eyes went black, followed by unconsciousness, and between the burning days, I seemed to see my mother standing next to me, her eyes glaring angrily at me. "Lin Anan, why don't you go and die? Why don't you go and die?" She doesn't realize that I'm actually really dying. The doctor said I have stomach cancer and I don't have long to live. Yesterday's high fever probably triggered a stomach bug. I was spasming in pain, my face was pale and my arms and legs were shaking. I braced myself to climb out of bed, my mind going blank, and woke up in the hospital. The doctor was very careful and gentle in treating the wounds on my body. He looked at me with a worried face. "Your body can't withstand any more tossing and turning, otherwise you won't last even 2 months, not to mention a year." I licked my lips and smiled. "It's okay, doctor, just prescribe me some medicine. I want the cheapest, please." The doctor sighed and wanted to say something, but finally got up and went to prescribe me some medicine. I looked out the window and fumed. The sun was so nice, it shone warmly on people's bodies. I thought I'd live as long as I could, and I wanted to earn more money so that my mom would still be secure when I was gone. I took the medicine and hobbled out of the hospital, only to run into Zhang Asahi in front of the hospital. She towered over me, the disdain in her eyes undisguised. She covered her mouth and laughed. Lin and Anne, how come after 3 years of not seeing each other, you got yourself into this state? Tsk. Look at you now. What's the difference between being down and out and a bereaved dog? I didn't want to argue with her and twisted my head to leave, but Zhang Xiaolo wasn't going to let me go at all. She stepped forward and grabbed my hand, her face full of mockery. Lin and Anne, it doesn't feel good to be down and out, does it? I calmly raised my head and stared into her eyes. Zhang Asahi, why? I don't understand why Zhang Xiaolo is targeting me so much. If it's because of Huo Li, we've long since stopped crossing paths in the past 3 years, so why would she grab me and not let go? Zhang Qian's face changed slightly and quickly returned to normal. Lin and Anne, what I hate the most is your lofty appearance, relying on the fact that you are the Lin family's eldest lady. You are unbeatable. I just want you to fall from the clouds into the mud and taste the life of an ordinary person. What do you say if the scene from 3 years ago is repeated? Does Holly believe you or me? With that, she let go of my hand and fell straight down. Zhang Xiao didn't fall. Huo Li arrived in time to hold her in his arms. She tightly hugged Huo Li's neck, tears flashing, her voice trembling. Just now I was so afraid. I was so afraid that I would never see you again in this life. Saying this, Zhang Xiaolo slumped onto Huo Li's shoulder, but her gaze provocatively looked at me. I find this kind of drama rather pointless. Turning around and about to leave, Holly pulled me from behind, tugging on my wrist so tightly that I couldn't help but cringe in pain. He forced me to drag me to him, too weak to support me, and dropped to his knees, spilling the medicine in his arms. I fumbled around trying to pick up the medicines. I had worked so hard to save up for them. I couldn't afford to just waste them. A foot stepped over and flattened the pillbox, crushing the medicine all over the floor. Originally, I had some pity for you when I saw you were sick, but you're sick and still thinking about harming people. You don't deserve my sympathy at all. Holly crouched down, reached out and cupped my chin directly, forcing me to meet his eyes. The sunlight sprinkled on his handsome face. I only heard his extremely cold words. Lin and Anne, after so many years, you really haven't changed at all, as vicious as ever. Why don't people like you go to death? I looked at the disgust in his eyes and my heart stung with a stabbing pain. The man I once loved and protected so much loathed me so much that he hated me to death. For the sake of Zhang Xiao, he can't wait for me to die. I didn't argue. Since he has condemned me to death in his heart, no matter what I say, he won't believe it. Huo Li pulled Zhang Qian away. I crouched down a little and picked up the already broken medicine. The cold wind blew over, hurting my face and my heart even more. I sat down on the steps and hugged myself tight, unable to stop my eyes from getting sore. After a long time, I got up from the ground, patted the dust on my ass, and cradled the medicine in my arms as I took one step towards home. Once again, I was thrown down, walked back onto legs. When I got home, my mother, who had always scolded me at every turn, was suddenly pleasant. She took my hand and reached out to touch my head. Obviously, her hand was so cold, but my heart was warm. But the next words hit me in the head. She said, "And Anne, you're not young anymore. It's not like staying at home all the time. Mom found you a good guy. Later you'll pack up your stuff and move over to go with him." I didn't think my mom would actually kick me out of the house at this point. I realized that I was sold by my mom for $200,000. Sold my life and freedom to a man. It wasn't more than an hour before the man arrived. Looking at the 20-something-year-old suits and green jellyfish watches on his hands, he looked to be either rich or wealthy. With looks like his and his own strengths, he shouldn't have to worry about finding a girlfriend. I stood aside with extreme urgency, but the man took the initiative to extend his hand to me. "Hello, my name is Sue Xing. From now on, you will be Mrs. Sue." "Why?" "I need someone to help me stabilize my family, and you're the best person for that with your simple connections." I nodded my head in agreement. I was a dying man anyway, and it would be nice to leave my mom a sum of money before I died. And this way, Holly won't have to worry about me seducing him again. I have 2 requests before I go back. You say. On call, the second doing her duty as Mrs. Sue. It's not a hard thing for me to do. I went back to my room and packed 2 sets of clothes. There wasn't really anything to pack. Everything I brought from your house in the first place had been sold by my mom over the years. I gave my mom a reluctant look as I left, but my mom waved her hand and urged me to hurry. I wiped my tears and followed Sue Xing's lead, moving into Sue's house just like that. 3 days later was a banquet held by the Sue family. As Mrs. Sue, I accompanied him to attend. That day I appeared at the party holding his hand. Under the dim light, he slowly approached me. I subconsciously took a step back to avoid it. The smile on Sue Xing's face solidified. You think I really want to kiss you? It's just for show. I know it's all a lie. Sue Xing married me back just to spite Huo Li. I turned around and saw Huo Li staring at me grimly. I don't know how long he had been standing over there. I only saw that his eyes were cold. I avoided his eyes and tried to leave, but Holly was already striding popularly toward me. He squeezes my wrists so hard it's like he's trying to break my bones. Hooking up with another guy so soon. He never used to get angry about things like this. This is my business and has nothing to do with Mr. Huo. Didn't he always want me to stop pestering him? Now that I'm away from him, he should be happy, but why does he still seem angry? He forced me into a corner and pressed down on my body, his coarse fingers against my neck. Lin and Anne, were you lying when you said you would like me for the rest of your life? My heart was beating so hard that I remembered how he had once said that if he ever heard the word like out of my mouth again, he was going to set me back on my feet. I'll take the fall. Don't take the fall. Yeah, it's all a lie. I suddenly remembered that the only gift Holly had ever given me was a woven bracelet. At that time, I was so full of joy that I thought he had knitted this bracelet for me, so I wore it lovingly on my hand, and even though it was an inch too big and always fell off, it was still my favorite. Then one winter, when I finished my last part-time job and was in a hurry to feel the next one, I accidentally lost that bracelet halfway across the room. By the time I found out, I was crying my heart out, and I braved the cold winter night to walk down that street alone in the wind and snow, looking everywhere on that road, and still not finding it. That's when I knew that maybe I should give up. I already knew that the bracelet wasn't woven for me by Huo Li, but after it passed through his hands, I treated it like a treasure. It was thrown away, perhaps also as a reminder from God that I've had enough for all these years. I took a deep breath. My voice was soft. Too tired to chase. I thought Huo Li would be happy, but his eyes were staring at me like a poisonous snake, and I couldn't see the color of his eyes. Mr. Huo, my husband is still waiting for me. He finally let me go. The next day, Sue Xing took me to a reception. His first love was there. She was drinking one glass after another, and Sue Xing left me behind and walked towards her with a heartbroken look on his face. Zhang Xiao was also there, and it was Huo Li who brought her. She walked up to me and smiled at me, but with amusement in her eyes. Lin and Anne, aren't you quite capable of drinking? Why don't you go have a few drinks? She always did the most evil things with this hypocritical face. It's just that I don't understand. Now that I'm married to Sue Xing, what else is she so uneasy about that she still won't let me go? I didn't want to invite trouble and softened my voice. If you don't want to see me, I can stay out of your and Holly's presence. Zhang Xiao, however, smiled. Don't, I want you to watch me get married and have children with the man you love. I let out a faint, oh so slight sigh. Once I would have been in pain, but now my heart was as calm as water. Turning around, I saw Holly standing behind me. I wondered when he had come and how much he had heard. Sue Xing's first love drank and vomited, and he was in a whole hurry to find a replacement. Zhang Xiao walked over. Lin and you haven't been an escort for 3 years. I'm sure you must be a good drinker. Your husband needs you now. I looked over at Holly, who narrowed his eyes, his voice cold to the bone. "Go on." He acquiesced. I turned around and went straight to Sue Xing. "Don't forget our agreement, now I need you to hold the drinks." I glanced at Holly, who clearly heard me, but did nothing to stop it. I gritted my teeth. I'm afraid that if I begged for mercy from him, I would die even worse. People like them see it as a pleasure to play with people's hearts and minds to torture them to death. I compromised. I walked over and watched as Sue Xing nursed his first love in his arms. The glass of wine was handed to me and I took it from his hand and tilted my head back and drank it down. The alcohol slid down my throat, irritating my mouth and throat, choking me so much that I couldn't help but cough violently, and a sudden sharp pain came from my stomach, spasming me with pain, and my mind was dazed and unconscious. In a haze, I seemed to hear countless tirades. "Lin and Anne, you're so cheap, why don't you go to hell? You're the one who killed your father, you spoilsport, you disaster, if only I hadn't given birth to you in the first place. Turns out so many people want me dead." My entire body fell to the ground, my body sprawled on the cold ground, unable to feel an ounce of warmth, and the cramping pain in my stomach spread out, stabbing me with a dense pain in my heart. Unconscious, Holly pulled me to my feet, and my stomach turned as hard as it could, and a fishy sweetness rushed up my throat as I violently spat out a mouthful of blood. I remembered what the doctor had told me. I looked at the bright red blood in my hand, cried and laughed, and looked up at him. "Huo Li, I'm going to die. Are you satisfied?" I used to hold my heart of gold to him and it ignored it, but now I see a glimmer of sadness in the bottom of his eyes. He scooped me up and held me in his arms, the first time I'd ever felt his embrace. I even got a little lucky and wondered if he cared about me a little bit in his heart too. "You're not going to die." I didn't say anything and closed my eyes, waking up again in the hospital room. I saw Zhang Asahi staring at me dead in the face. Holly's chest rose and fell violently as he stepped forward and dragged me straight out of the hospital bed. "Lin and Anne, you're a liar. I'm so fucking blind to believe your words one more time." He threw the checklist in my face. "A little stomach ulcer can kill you?" I looked at the test results on the checklist and wondered which step had gone wrong. What should have been stomach cancer turned out to be a stomach ulcer. I saw Zhang Shallow on the side smiling and instantly realized that she should be the one to move. I didn't explain, and now even if I did, he wouldn't believe me. I looked up and smiled at Holly. I was just messing around. The anger in Huo Li's eyes grew deeper and deeper. Zhang Xiao still doesn't mind adding fuel to the fire. "Lin and Anne, how can you lie like this? Do you know how much everyone was worried about you just now? Originally, remembering that you're seriously ill in this bed, I didn't want to get into it with you for dirtying the shoes that brother Huo Li gave me. Now I really think that people like you don't deserve any sympathy at all." The anger on Huo Li's face deepened, and he stared at me dead on, his young eyes like a cold pool. He forcefully pulled my hand down on the top of Zhang Shallow's shoe. "A lowly person like you, only worthy of doing the lowest things. Wipe your hands clean for me. If you leave a little blood, I'll get you killed." I struggled desperately, water coming out of my eyes as he yanked on me. "Huo Li, I don't want it." Huo Li pulled my hair tightly. I was torn by his scalp. He forcefully held down my head, his gaze fierce, as if he had found a vent, wanted to punish me severely, humiliate me. "If you don't want to wipe it off, then lick it clean. I'm still tired of your dirty hands when you're such a lowlife." I cried and begged him. "Huo Li, I really know I'm wrong. I'll never lie to you again. Please spare me this time. Starting today, I'll disappear and never bother you again." Holly didn't believe me at all, his eyes filled with sarcasm. "Lin and Anne, you have to be punished for doing something wrong." Holly didn't let go of me. He held my head down dead, and my lips touched Zhang Xiao's shoes. A strong smell of blood mixed with the taste of leather filled my mouth. A wave of revulsion welled up in my stomach, spreading out into a pain that was no match for the stabbing pain in my heart. I hate it so much. I hate Huo Li for being heartless and hate Zhang Xiao for being unscrupulous. I've clearly tried to stay away from them, so why won't they leave me alone and humiliate me in this way? I don't know where I got the strength from, but I pushed Holly away and raised my hand to fling a hard slap across his face. Huo Li was first stunned and shocked, followed by intense anger. He tapped his foot on my finger, chucking it back and forth, and I felt like my knuckles were going to break. I curled up tightly in pain as he tortured me while speaking in a cold voice. Lin and Anne, it really makes me sick. Huo Li and I have been childhood sweethearts since we were kids, and I've been secretly in love with him for 15 whole years, and I never thought that one day he would humiliate me in these ways. The medical staff rushed over and saw the scene in front of them, did not dare to persuade them at all. They were afraid of Huo Li's power and could only let me be bullied by him. I slumped helplessly to the ground, tears falling in large streams into my hair, hurting so much that my body had gone numb. Holly eventually let go of me, kicking my raggedy body before he left. When he was gone, the paramedics sighed, which helped me up. I was in the hospital for a long time recovering from my injuries. It wasn't until a month later that Zhang Xiao came to the hospital to deliver my invitation. Holly accompanied her and asked me to come to their wedding. I'd been locked up in the hospital for so long with no freedom, and I realized this was an opportunity, a chance to escape. I'll go and bless it. On the day of their wedding, Holly's assistant came to pick me up. I also brought the clothes that Zhang Asahi had specially prepared for me. I was forced to change into a gown, and the large, backless design did nothing to hide the scars on my back. I know that Zhang Asahi did it on purpose. Moments before the wedding appearance, Zhang Xiao found me. She had a dagger in her hand. Lin and Anne, as long as you live for one day, you'll keep pestering Huo Li, so only when you're dead can I really feel relieved. She tried to kill me and I instinctively tried to run. Zhang Xiao didn't give me a chance to escape at all. She grabbed my hand and sent the dagger to my hand. Hooking her lips, she smiled. Lin Anne, this time it's definitely still my win. With that said, she grabbed my hand and stabbed her. My eyes widened in disbelief that Zhang Asahi had gone so far as to kill herself in order to let me die. Soon Holly arrived and I froze in place, my fingers still shaking. Zhang Xiao collapsed into his arms. Brother Huo Li, am I dying? I just wanted to persuade Lin and Anne to stay away from you, but I didn't expect her to try to kill me. Holly looked up, killing intent all over his eyes. I listened to the murmurs of the people around me. She killed someone. She actually killed the bride. The fear in my heart went to the extreme, and I subconsciously wanted to open my mouth to argue, but no sound could come out of my throat. My throat tightened and I turned around, desperately trying to escape. With the gown restraining my movements, I unzipped and removed it. I had planned to escape at the site of the wedding, so I wore a sports tank top underneath. Huo Li stared intently at my back. Lin and Anne, it's you, is it you? I didn't know what he was talking about as he chased after me, and I ran faster and faster, using all my strength, not even noticing that I had come to a highway. I heard Huo Li yell at me from behind. I slowly turned my head and saw an extremely fast car crashing directly towards me. I didn't even have time to react, and my whole body was knocked out. Fell hard to the ground. I felt what seemed like a warm liquid coming out of the back of my head, and I reached out to touch it, and my hand was full of blood. Holly came over and looked at me, seemingly frozen in place, not knowing what to do. I could see that his eyes were red and his tall body was trembling slightly. I smiled at him and spoke weakly. Holly, now I'm really going to die. Holly wasn't happy. He came up and took me in his arms, calling my name over and over again. Linen, don't sleep, I beg you not to. His voice was getting fuzzy. I just feel so tired. Since 3 years ago, when the Lin family went bankrupt, there is no one in this world who loves me anymore. My mother, who is dependent on me, blames me for everything and hates me for dying, and it's really tiring to live like this. I wanted to sleep so badly, and it seemed nice to just go to sleep quietly, without any pain. It wasn't long before I thought I heard an ambulance. They put me on a stretcher, and I heard Holly begging the paramedics. "Please, you must save her." I can't believe that the always arrogant Holly would stoop so low as to beg. It must be my illusion. I've been chasing him for so many years and he's been disgusted to the core, so if I'm dead, he should be happy to be without me as a lickspittle. Hardly on the verge of laxity, the past came back to me. When I was 10 years old on my way home, I was bullied by my senior classmates, and Holly came down from the sky to save me, and ever since then, he has been like a knight in disguise, escorting me home every night and keeping me safe. But then, my knight was gone. With all the doctor's efforts, I still woke up. It's just that I lost my memory. I don't know who I am and I can't think about things for too long. The back of my head aches like a drill just thinking about it. Sometimes when the pain was long, the nurse's sister would give me a pill and I would fall asleep afterward. I like to look out the window every day and stare. The doctor says I can't go out and walk just yet, but I really like being free. I stayed in the hospital room every day, and only my sister nurse could talk to me. There's a man who always comes to see me. He brings me a bouquet of roses every time he visits. I don't know why, but every time I see a flower, my heart instinctively loathes it. I don't like flowers or people who give them, but he was happy to do it every day. Every time he asks me if I still like him. I said, "I hate you." Yes, hate, not like or dislike. I instinctively loathed him. Just the sight of him, the smell of him, made my stomach roll like a churn. I'm rejecting his proximity. Every time I did, he gave a lost look. Then silently, he put the flowers on the side of my bed and turned away. One day, he came back. Instead of roses, this time he brought a string of bracelets. The pattern on it was woven crookedly and embroidered with 2 words, peace. He handed the braided rope to me as if offering it as a treasure. "And Anne, do you like it? I made this with my own hands." He grabbed my hand and I fought back desperately, and when he put the braided rope in my hand, I dropped it as if it were hot. His eyes reddened as he watched me react so violently. The tall figure trembled slightly and picked the braided rope up with shivering fingers. He wiped a little bit of ash off the braided rope and murmured, "How could you not like it? How could you not react to it? This used to be your favorite thing." I find it strange how I used to like such ugly things. He turned and hugged me, and as soon as I touched his body, fear welled up in my heart, and I cringed in fear, desperately trying to push him away, but he held me tighter. "And Anne, I'm wrong. I really know I'm wrong. I shouldn't have done this to you. It's all my fault for having no eyes. It's me who recognized the wrong person." He hugged me so hard that I couldn't breathe, and I just felt a wave of heaven as I fainted. When I woke up, I heard the doctor say to him, "This is memory damage from the car accident. When she was brought here, she was already you hanging on by a thread. It's a good thing she's still alive now." I sat up and looked up just in time to meet his eyes. His eyes were full of guilt, red as rabbits, and a complexity I couldn't read. I lowered my head. Soon he was gone. He still comes every day as before, but now he tells me stories every day. It's all about a little boy who protects a little girl every day. I'm tired of hearing about it. One day I looked up and asked him, "Why is it that he protects this little girl every day and the little girl still gets hurt?" He opened his mouth and couldn't seem to get a word out. His brow was furrowed and his face was filled with pain. He held his head. "Because I haven't protected her since, I've misidentified her. I've lost the little girl I was protecting in the first place." He covered his face and cried in pain, but I didn't feel a thing and looked at him very coldly. After he had cried enough, he asked me with red eyes, "And Anne, will you let me continue to protect you in the future?" I shook my head without hesitation. "I don't want it." He cried and laughed and, "I'm your Holly. In the past you liked to stick to me the most. You pestered me for 15 years on. Why can you say you don't want it?" "I just don't want you. I hate you. I don't even want to see you." I yelled at him excitedly. Holly looked at me sadly and reached out to touch my head, which I dodged. His hand stayed in mid-air, and his expression seemed to grow even more sorrowful. He left, and on his way out he told me to get some rest and that he'd come back to see me tomorrow, and I hid under the covers and covered my face, not wanting to go back to him at all. Then a woman came over to see me too. She looked a little crazy and delirious. I feel sad inside when I see her. Tears couldn't help but fall out in big drops as the woman grabbed my hand in a heartfelt hug and held me in her arms. She said over and over again, "And Anne, I'm sorry, it's Mommy's fault. Mommy shouldn't have put all the fault on you. Can you forgive Mommy?" I just kept crying and crying and crying. The back of my head hurt, my voice was hoarse and dry, and I didn't want to say a word. The woman cried harder when she saw that I didn't say anything. "Anne, my Anne, why has it come to this when it was obvious 3 years ago that Mommy loved you the most?" I'd cried enough to push the woman away. She didn't say anything anymore either, just looked at me and kept shedding tears. Every day afterward, the woman and Holly would take turns coming over to take care of me, and one day they ran into each other. The woman was so excited to see Holly that she rushed towards him as if she was crazy and slapped him in the face. His face was knocked askew and off to the side, his head bowed like a child who had done something wrong. The woman shouts hysterically, "Huo Li, what did my daughter do wrong? To have you do this to her, it wasn't enough that you caused our family to fall apart, but now you've made her look like this. If I had known you were a demon, I should never have let Anne bring you back in the first place." I saw Holly on his knees, flinging himself over and over again. The woman was not moved by this in the slightest. "And Anne doesn't want to see you. You're not allowed to come back to see her in the future, and if you really feel guilty, you should disappear from her world completely." Huo Li stood up, slowly turned around, looked at me and said very firmly, "I won't give up on Anne." I spent 2 months recuperating in the hospital. Then one day a colorfully dressed woman came over, she stepped on her high heels and looked at me condescendingly. "Lin and seeing you become like this now, I'm really hurting. It's just a pity how that car didn't just run you over in the first place. If you died, that secret would never be known again, but why didn't you die?" The woman said and lifted up her shirt. She had a birthmark on her backside that looked exactly like mine. It was with this birthmark that Huo Li misrecognized me in the first place. It's really ironic that the two of us have the exact same birthmark. But it doesn't matter now, so what if Huo Li knows the truth? You'll never be able to forgive him in this life. You two are not destined to be together, and I'll be happy. I was better, sometimes remembering bits and pieces in my head, and Holly picked me up. I don't want to go back with him at all, but I seem to be homeless already. He placed me in a villa and sent servants to take care of me and talk to me every day as well. By the end of the night, he'd be going crazy, ripping my clothes off and kissing my back. He would stroke my rear end, tickling me every time, and I always felt as if he was touching my birthmark. How can there be identical birthmarks in this world? Why did the heavens play a huge joke on me? Lin and Anne, the person who saved me was obviously you, but I misidentified the next person. He said something I couldn't understand, and every time I was confused. At first I would fight back, but then I gradually became numb. I was like a doll, letting him hug me, touch me, and kiss me. Every time he kissed me, he would ask me, "And Anne, give me a chance to make up for everything, and I'll make up for you for the rest of my life, okay?" Not good. Even though I've lived with him for a long time, I still don't like his touch. It's just that physically I've adapted to the numbness. He whispered in my ear that night. He said that when he was 5 years old, he got lost with his parents at a playground and was almost about to be abducted by traffickers, and I was the one who brought him home and helped him find his parents. But that night he had a high fever, and when he woke up he didn't remember what I looked like. All he remembers is that the little girl had a love heart birthmark on her back. Later he meets Zhang Shang and accidentally sees the love heart birthmark on her back, and he assumes that Zhang Shang is the little girl who saved him in the first place. He said he knew Zhang Shallow was setting me up, but at the time he thought Zhang Shallow was the little girl who saved him, and indulged her in doing a lot of things to hurt me. He said he missed me the 3 years I disappeared. He said he'd been in love with me for a long time. Just woke up too late. He stared at me with eager eyes, and I just blandly replied back. Oh, and then what? It doesn't matter anymore. I watched as the light in his eyes faded out and his entire body sat in place like dead wood. I tucked in my covers and stared calmly at the ceiling. I'd rather I never saved you. Huo Li held me in his arms and asked me over and over again. What exactly do I have to do for you to forgive me? I said, unless you die. Holly smiled and promised me. Okay, then I'll die. I didn't see Holly for a whole week, and it was his assistant who told me when I heard from him again. Miss Lin, Mr. Huo jumped to his death yesterday at the playground. This is all the properties under Mr. Huo's name. Mr. Huo explained before he died that I must hand these over to you. He said that he had already taken a life for a life, so are you able to forgive him? I shook my head. Not all mistakes are forgiven in this world.